All right, good morning and welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
And Rohi Zachariah.
And today, Rohi, we have a pretty good episode here.
Yeah.
We're calling it a fiction, right? We have a lot of fictional books, and we want to know, have any of those fictional books, and we have one in particular, I think it's 1984, and we want to know how much of that has really materialized over the years. So I think this was written back in 1948 by George Orwell, but he predicted the future that in 1984 this is the way things would be. So I know this was a classic book going to school, but we just want to bring and highlight to see if any of that technology is available now and how accurate was this author back in those days. But before we do that, we certainly want to recognize a couple of local events that are taking place. Rohi, I know we have an event coming up here pretty shortly. Can you touch on that,
we
please?
have this Saturday's the 94th Old Timers Parade, which goes down downtown there on Yosemite with our king and queen this year being Cheryl and Randy Berry. It's, I think, one of Madeira's highlight events, as far as downtown and a gathering of, I think, pretty much everybody at this point. So it's good to kind of see everybody come together to just watch a good parade come downtown. So.
Good. And we also had a recent announcement of a retirement for the chief administrative officer here at Madera County, Jay Barney, that has served the county now for the last 5.5 years as a CAO. Prior to that, he was the elected sheriff. Prior to that, he was a chief over at the city of Chowchilla and the administrator at the city of Chowchilla. Over 42 years of public service that expanded from Lansing, Michigan, Dallas, Texas, and over in California. So congratulations to him. The city council, alongside other organizations and leaders, certainly presented him with congratulatory and recognition certificates yesterday. So we wish him well on his new endeavors and new journey. I did point out that golf would be
I did like that, yes.
a good way of maybe getting that retirement going. But with that, any words you'd like to offer?
No, I mean, again, I know you took the mic for the council to speak for it. I do say, congrats, Jay, on his retirement. I do hope he finds something, whether golf or something, because, there's too many times that either they end up getting another job because people like him just can't stop doing what they do, or it just becomes something to where the wife is going to keep you busy, and you're going to be busier than if you would have had a real job. So I do wish him the best, and that he does find something to take his time. So
good. And with that, Rohi, and I'll touch on this right before we jump into this, the 1984. We have that. We wanted to bring up that cover just so that we can kind of make it interesting. I wanted to put that thumbnail. But, you touched on something there is our routines that we have, Rohi, especially when it comes to like what we're used to doing, whether you're 40, whether you're 60 or 70, you're closer to retirement. One thing that I've observed, and this is what I do, is that when folks tend to retire, they have to substitute that with something that keeps them just as busy. I feel that a lot of the times, and this isn't particular to Jay, this isn't, and just, it happens. I mean, at some point, you and I will have to start considering at what time do we just shut it down and we start actually focusing on other things that are not necessarily work. And for you, being that you're a business owner, I kind of see your dad in a way, it's hard for him to shut it down because I think he still wants to be active, involved, although you can say that he may be semi-retired. I don't know. I mean,
sure.
Right? So at what point do you shut it down? At what point do you say, you know what, I'm actually done. I'm actually done with whatever it is that I'm doing, whether you're at public service or you work for a company, a private company, right?
Yeah, I think key to that, and this is just from obviously a lot of customers that I talk to that have reached that age, it's a reason to wake up. And that's where retirement can be the death of you, is because, for a lot of people, maybe 20, 30 years, their reason to wake up was that job. And when that's taken away, the first maybe month or year, it's a sign of relief because, hey, I can sleep in, or I can do whatever I want, or I can, we can go jump in the car and go for a drive if we want to. And there are some negative health effects to that because, you don't maybe realize that a lot of that driving force is what guided eating on time, eating correctly, having correct sleep cycles, But again, it's also just, something that motivates the brain, keeps you sharp, and just keeps you moving along. And when you lose that, that's where people will say that sometimes very shortly after a full retirement, meaning somebody who just decides to do nothing after they retire, will usually find themselves in the ground within a couple of years, just because there's that dramatic shift.
Yes, yes. And you know, I think I see this even in my own schedules that I do. I haven't retired, but I like to do some physical exercises, you know, throughout the week, maybe once or twice a week. And my exercise is very simple. You know, I do a couple of push-ups here and there. I try to keep myself motivated, right? Yeah. But the moment I stop and I go a prolonged period, which I do, I have these pauses that I go 3 to 4 months. I start going back to the like you said, you know, I start reverting back to like, okay, well, I'm eating a little bit more. I'm eating outside of a schedule that I currently have. Yeah. And I'm starting to feel lethargic. I'm starting to feel like something's different in my body, right? You feel it. Mm-hmm. And that's because I'm starting to, I guess, get complacent with you know, this lifestyle that I'm having now. Yeah. And then I remind myself, hey, something's not right. Something's not right. My system, my digestive system starts getting screwed up a little bit because, again, I'm not taking care of myself like I said I would. And I feel it. There's a change. So then I get back to it. It takes me about 4 weeks to be caught up to where I left off. Yeah. And then, you know, you start feeling good again. Like you said, you know, you start getting a routine. You get up early in the morning. You do your stuff that you're going to do. You know, you go to work. You're on point. But it's easy to revert back when you're no longer having to do that because nobody's telling you have to do that, right? Exactly. I'm assuming that as a CAO, you have to be there every morning.
Yeah, performance reports.
Yeah, right. As someone that works out in the field, you have to be there because work's got to be done. Or someone like you and I that has a business, you have to be there to open it. If you have don't open it, nobody comes. But certainly, I think you're right. And no matter who retires, whether it's the CAO or if it's you or I or anyone else, I mean, I think it's good to find something like you said to keep you sharp, to keep you moving. So we won't beat that anymore. But again, congratulations to Jay. Yeah. But now let's go ahead and move on to what the topic of the show is today, right? And we said, well, let's find out. Do fictional stories become a reality? Mm-hmm. And again, there's many books out there, movies, right? And movies are inspired by books. Whether, you know, you have something like 1984. Mm-hmm. Again, who would have thought that this book would materialize in many, many ways, right? Yeah. Especially in the way things happen, right? Yeah. So when you were in school, did you ever get an opportunity to read this book or visit through it? Or I'm sure you heard of it because a lot of kids have. Yeah, I mean,
I have heard of it, I know of it, and I know its ideas. And I think, you know, when you said before we kind of started talking about like technology and stuff, that's when it comes to the future and where we're going, technology has always been, you know, what's in my interest. And, you know, people always come together. I mean, they've been doing this for thousands of years, trying to predict, okay, what's the future? When is the end? What's it going to look like? You know, how are things going to be? And I think as, you know, especially what we consider older books, like you're saying this is from, you know, 1948, like something that is so dated, to think that it could be so relevant today, it just shows you maybe two different bridges. One, maybe the ability for a visionary, and there's many that have come along that have accurately predicted where we would be today, or the other side is to say maybe somebody else has read this book and taken inspiration from the book and made it into reality. You know, there's definitely two ways to kind of think about it. You know, I would definitely say, you know, the way we're going, it is on par as far as, you know, our voices and how we're being silenced, and you know, kind of like it's talking about like the Big Brother and our, you know, like everything we do, even right now, we're being watched, you know, and at some point, you know, especially with recent events, is how easy it is for the thumb to come down to just silence you, you know.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about Big Brother, you know, and I know that we're not going down a conspiracy hole. We're actually just kind of bringing it to light, shedding some light on what the term Big Brother meant back then and what it means today. Yeah. And, you know, the funny is when I watched the movie, I think somewhere back in the 80s or 90s, I think they had a movie, and we watched it at school. But back then they had these what were screens, or at least, right? And these screens, I think you had moments that people had to come together, almost like it wasn't prayer, but it was like watch these screens that are going to give you. And again, it's been. I know that I'm dating back because it's been some time.
Yeah.
But it came back to surface here. It resurfaced with my son now reading this and writing a report. And it was funny because I was listening to his little report that he had wrote, and he was going to present at school. And I'll share that with that later. But back then, at least in the movie, what I recall was people would congregate to come together to I don't know if they had to show their face on these screens or they were listening to what the Big Brother was saying, right? But like you said, Big Brother's always watching you, meaning that, hey, your every move, your everything that you do, your digital footprint is everywhere, right? And we look at our phones today. We look at every piece of equipment that we have, and it's pretty much scary to think that, hey, we're there. We've been there, right?
Yeah.
And, like you said, cameras in every corner. Your phones become a camera. Your phones become another talking piece.
Yeah.
And again, not saying that they're listening, but I'm assuming, and again, this is me making an assumption, is that these devices were made to capture voice recognition, to capture, now it's Siri, we may call it Siri, and it's helpful for us to find certain things and navigate around the phone, but at the same time, Rohi, it can also listen into your conversations, because there are times when I talk, and I don't remember asking Siri for the comments or whatever suggestions, but it does, because it listens in to what I'm saying. Now, the command wasn't there to spit back to me, but I'm assuming that it listens, right?
Yeah. Well, and the scarier part is, it wasn't very long ago that people were very, the word privacy driven. Everybody was, I want to keep my secret life secret, and then, when we had 9/11, it turned into, instead of being called Big Brother, it was just an intelligence agency. It was just, we need to have these mechanisms to gather all this information to catch these bad guys. And people were like, yeah, let's do it. Let me give up a little bit of my freedom as long as we can stop something bad from happening. But where we've gone is bad still happens. And each time the narrative is, well, we need a little bit more, power. We need a little bit more information. We needed you to give up a little bit more. And you're thinking, well, I'm not the bad guy. I know, but we have to do this to everybody, and that's kind of where part of where, I think we're leading today is kind of getting what's coming out, and what people are kind of really talking about is, is there future events planned to, again, reignite this idea that, hey, we need to know more. We need to have you give up a little bit more of your privacy, even though today, like you said, there's probably not much left, because even our conversation today is somehow being recorded. I'm sure if I say some keywords right now and I go do a Google search, they're probably going to start showing ads related to that. Maybe the book for 1984. I don't know, but that's the kind of thing that I think for most people are getting a little scary, because if you're not paying attention, it's happening right in front of you.
Yeah, and I think the motive behind this topic is to really not so much to draw a conspiracy, because I think we've
sure
already,
it is. You can say the word.
Well, we've already passed that, really. It's because we know that a lot of these things that were said back then have come to fruition.
They have,
right?
yeah.
We've seen the invention of the televisions, the inventions of the screens, how we communicate. But more importantly is how you communicate with the masses, right? And I think in this book, George Orwell describes a world where you have several classes, right? You have your oligarchs, you have your the intellectuals, and then you have your other class, which is the majority of what you see today, right? It ain't no different. So the similarities are there, and I'm thinking, well, back then when he wrote that book, what was he basing it off, right?
Yeah.
What just had happened, right? And maybe World War II had happened. Obviously you saw how propaganda was utilized, especially during the German occupation of a lot of Europe. But it was, and these are historical facts. It's not like we're throwing stuff out there, right? To some extent there could be opinion, but there is some historical data that certainly proves some context to that. And back then, it was easy, especially when people weren't familiar with the forms of media and outlets, right? Radio was one of them. The projector and showing these movies was another, right? So I remember, I forget the gentleman that was helping Hitler with the, I don't know if it was Goebbels, right? I don't know. I think it was him. It was the other guy. I forget his name. But this guy was really good at propaganda, right?
Yeah.
And in 1984, I think they show the same thing. They show you who to hate. It's like a hate. You have a little square of time where you're going to hate, right? Here's the people we want you to hate. And then they would show, obviously, this guy, character Goldstein. They would show North Asia, East Asia. These were the people that were at war. But they wanted you to see the chaos and how they propagated you to continue to add some type of hate towards that character / or that event. And how you control the masses was by providing them, confusing them.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of that, I mean, Rohit, again, this isn't a conspiracy, but do we see that today in how media is powerful enough to control a certain narrative or shape an opinion?
One other book, and I was trying to remember it, so I had to start to look it up. But The Time Machine, by H.G. Wells, which is talking about a guy who goes to the year 802,701, and it talks about, again, the two classes. I don't know if you're familiar with that book or not, but that was one of the books that I really liked to read. But what always caught me there was, again, when you're looking out, where are we going? Maybe not 800,000 years into the future, but like I think we've talked about a few times on the show, is just this idea that there is a separation of classes, but to some degree, like you would call them old, how do I say the word? But these
oligarchs?
Yeah, the super powerful, super smart, and basically they dangle the rest of the people down below to do what they need to do to stay alive. It's not too distant future, I always liked reading or watching even futuristic movies, because again, it's kind of where it's going, which is this, there's a few corporations, they're just the ones in control. You have, like, if you want a cup of coffee, you can only get it from them because they control every outlet. If you want to do anything, every step of the way is controlled to some degree, kind of like what we have today, where we've talked about like just little farms, like. Nobody grows a farm anymore. Nobody has like a little vegetable garden in their backyard because I just can go to the store and grab my own. Well, how was it made and what went into it and how much pesticides is in there? Are you actually eating a good, is it healthy? I don't know. I trust whatever is in the store, whatever they gave me. So again, some of that blind trust is what's leading us, unfortunately, down that path.
Yeah, and sometimes, Rohi, it's not so much that it's leading us; it's just starting to close and narrow those walls to say, well, you have no other way. I hate to say this, but when I look at believe me, when this isn't humans per se, but in certain cases, you look at how cattle sometimes is, how they're steered through. From their grazing land down to the trucks and then down to the slaughterhouse, right? And sometimes I'm reminded of how these mazes of how they go through to get to that truck, right? And when I go to a theme park, Rohi, and this is nothing big on any theme parks, but that's how I feel that they use me when I go there. I pay this amount of money, and then they put me through these gates, and they make me go through this thing, and I'm almost thinking, man. They must think I'm like we're cattle here. Like they're gonna hurt us here, and they want me to go through this maze here just so that I can get that exciting 2-minute thrill, and it really bothers me that I have to wait an hour to an hour and a half for that 2-minute, that 2-minute thrill that I'm gonna get, and somehow I'm okay with that, and somehow I'm supposed to be okay with that. This is why I don't like. Theme parks because of that. Because I feel like if you're going to pay a good amount of money and you're going to pay for a pass that's going to help you, then you should be able to get that a lot sooner than having to go through this maze of gates and what have you. Again, that's off topic, right? But
a lot of frustration there.
Frustration there. I wanted to vent out because to some extent, we're willing to go down to that. And you said it earlier, right? Are we really having these liberties disappear overnight because we are willing to give that up. We are willing to say, you know, for the safety, for the security of my well-being, I'm willing to give up this for freedom.
Yeah.
But again, in that book, I think the irony behind freedom is also slavery, right? I mean, and I know we're touching on this book because the book has different meanings and interpretations to many. But when my son was reading that to me and he was telling me, Dad, I have to do a presentation, and I go, all right, let me listen to it. And I sat there and he spilled about 3 to 5 minutes on it. And as he's talking to me, I'm just pondering and saying, damn, I mean, I haven't read this book for a long time. I haven't seen the movie for a long time. But everything that you're saying, I apply it to what's happening today. And I go, I wonder if any of those things are, you know, they're shaping out in some way or have shaped out. And again, you know, Big Brother, we talked about that earlier. You know, the irony behind, you know, freedom and slavery, the item behind hate and all that. I mean, is it playing out? Is it playing out? I think some people would argue and say, no, I think it's just a book. But others would say, no, there's a lot of similarities in that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess what I've always struggled with is, you know, when you look at some of those futuristic books, and you were talking about Star Wars and flying planes and like these like the Jetsons, or, you know, where we kind of want to be is what we call our future, this advanced future. You know, we always say, well, why aren't we there yet? And people will give excuses, oh, that's technology issues and whatever. It's about money. You know, if there's not a capitalistic gain, you know, or if one person can't control that, nobody's going to do it. And that's kind of where where we've seen, like with energy, you know, we're like, why gas companies and why we still use gas, even though we had electricity way back, you know, in the 40s, 50s, when all these cars were still, you know, everything was coming along. Gas smothered them a long time ago, right? So when you think about that, we don't have a society that is willing to do things for the better of society. Like, that mentality is just not there. It's always, well, I'm going to make
that's
this
a fantasy then?
It is. Well, I think that's where some of the followers of like Elon came so strong is and I hope he is, I mean, but I think they really do believe that he's maybe that person that is willing to do things. Like, he wants to go to Mars. I mean, that's his mission. Doesn't matter how we do it. Yeah, he's got to sell cars and he's got to make all this stuff, but he just wants to go to Mars, right? And he's able to do it cheaper and faster than any other government agency that's ever tried to do this, like Boeing and Lockheed, right? So that's where he had his following. But you need a whole society of Elons to basically come and say, look, everything we're going to do is because I want us to be here for the better of humanity, not because I want money in my pocket. Now, he needs money, so you can't blame him for being one of the most wealthy people in this world. He needs money to get that done. But if you can believe that he's a person that's saying that every move he's doing is not just because he wants to be wealthy, but because he wants to move humanity to a certain point. That's the future part that we don't have right now. Is most people are saying, I'm a person, I just want to be wealthier. And if it doesn't make me wealthy, then I don't want to do it. You know?
Yeah. So, and that's good you said that, because that brings up another fictional story, which is Star Trek, right? I mean, now you're talking Star Trek when they were navigating different planets, planetary systems, right?
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, back then, this is a show probably in the 50s, 60s that was played out pretty well, right?
Yeah.
But even then, I don't know that we had sent anybody to the moon at that time, but you had this idea, this picture that people can actually visit and do interplanet, travel or something to that nature. And it hasn't been 100 years. And we're pretty close to that, if not there, right? We visited the moon. There's trips to Mars that have happened. You have Elon Musk wanting to take that aggressive approach of saying, I can make it happen with rockets to get us there. Yeah.
But it's always to ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make it to the moon, or you take it to Mars. He may be thinking for a good cause, but how many people behind him are thinking, well, if we take it over and we colonize it, and now it becomes ours, and the resources and the money to be made, like, it's always got to be.
There's got to be an incentive,
force, right?
And you're right.
Because Star Trek wasn't going to planets to like make money.
No,
they were doing it for like, you want to feel like there was a cause, there was a reason behind it.
And that was the motive behind the theme, right? Is that, hey, these guys are exploring new things and saving humanity to some extent, right?
They didn't pillage and take what they could and leave.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, that's funny because you're right. Maybe there is something in Mars that could be a new colony, so to speak, that can potentially grow. And people probably didn't believe this, that you can actually travel to a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it, Roy. How, like, to fathom the idea of taking a rocket, taking you to a different planet, settling there, growing your food there, or you know, being able to live off of it. It's crazy, but it's very likely and probable, being that the conditions can be there to do that, right? Obviously, it may take a lot more technology. It may take you know, scientists to come together and find a way to be able to maybe breathe the oxygen there, or do something there, right? But it is very possible. We've seen it in movies, Interstellar. We've seen it in other, The Martian, right? We've seen it in these movies, and we're so close to it that technology continues to advance, so much so that it's scary not to think that you can't get there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's that we can't get there. I think it's, again, there's probably reasons why we're not yet, maybe, and stuff maybe that we don't need to know. But again, in a lot of those movies, you know, you find out as well as that there's always that concern that, again, what if Elon makes it first and he brings, you know, he's the first person to send his own people, and now they control Mars. Well, it's always about control, you know. I mean, it's so that I don't think that it would be an easy fight if he made the rocket tomorrow that can make it there and inhabit to some degree. There's going to be, I guarantee you, that conspiracy of somebody's going to be planted in there that's going to be, in a sense, controlling the situation, because we can't just send off whatever 10, 15, 20 people and just let them do whatever they want on Mars. Like, there's got to be some control. Like, you got to start making this valuable. You know, what are the resources? What are the stuff are you going to give back to us? So
yeah. So, you know, and a lot of the similarities that we talked about earlier, you were saying, like, what 1984 brought, right? And it was, I believe, in the last election, I think, when Twitter and I think Facebook had banned or censored certain content that was coming out from the president at the time, right?
Yeah.
And if you recall, the funny thing is, like 1984, there was a partnership between corporations and governments. Now this time around, it seems like they were at the front, they were at the table. They were sitting with Donald Trump. I don't know if you recall this. Again, this isn't something that I'm trying to uncover that you don't already see, because it's been there. But now they had to revert back and say, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea for me to start censoring. Obviously, with Twitter being taken over by X, a lot of that content was allowed now, right? A lot of these restrictions that were placed early on are now removed, and now there's partnerships. Now there's data collection between them. Now they work with the government, right? And this is where I think the neutrality of these businesses that give you that sense of freedom, that, hey, I'm not attached to the government, actually is not true.
Yeah.
They're very much attached. And now we look at our central banks, right, wanting to do digital, right? Kind of like what we see crypto, right? We see Bitcoin. Is that, to some extent, could that be a partner with the government to kind of see and monitor where you're at? I mean, as much as we want to believe that we have this sense of decentralized digital currency, I mean, government still is very involved, because it's to their benefit to know whether or not there's a leakage in the way money is being taxed, who's making this money, where's this money going to, is it being laundered, and of course, we're going to utilize any form of, well, there's terrorism, there's money laundering, there's whatever you want to call it, right? There's going to be terms utilized to make you feel like, hey, you trying to just have a little bit of money on the side, let it be $10,000. You know, I'll be at $10,000. Even though in your head you're saying, well, hopefully these $10,000 are there, I can use them for later. Hey, somebody needs to know what you're doing with those $10,000.
Yeah, well, it's like when they decided the tax, they wanted to tax all the PayPal and all these transactions. it's only the $600. It's, it's not that big a deal, but yeah, it is a big deal.
But I mean, I think with people, and I think this is why people still try to hold on to those precious metals sometimes, and why people try to hold on to something that's a hard asset, because they know this is not something you can touch.
Yeah.
Look, my eggs that I have here, I can barter with these. I can eat with them. And I know that they're here physically, and I think we've always said that thousands and thousands of years. I think we still haven't let go of that yet. There's certain people that still believe that these hard assets are still something that you can hold on to, tangible. But when you relinquish that to a digital central bank, then you're really saying, well, here, you tell me, and who knows? I mean, we've seen it recently, some sanctions that could happen. If you're a bad actor, Roy, if you haven't been paying your taxes, I'm gonna stop your rations that I give you.
Yeah.
You talked about universal income. That's pretty much very likely to happen in the future, Roy. I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime, but it's very likely that at some point we may have digital UBI. Is that universal base income or something like that? But there may be something like that. Am I a proponent of it? I'm not saying that I'm just telling you what's history has shown us.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily match, but it rhymes, right? There may be something to that extent that we may be able to see, where Rohi, you did not pay your taxes, you did not participate in the hate speech, or you did not participate here, so therefore I'm going to cut down your UBI. I'm going to sanction you, right? And that's what's scary to me, is that when government or any form of institution gets that powerful, then and they have control over that. That is very scary.
But I think the fallback to that, and when it does sound scary, because you're talking about, again, a digital money, and that's the only way to buy, quote unquote. But when you think about, if I have this pen, Jose, you can't digitize me physically having this pen. So even though you don't have the whatever dollar and digital credits to buy it, there's something we can barter. There's some way it will make sense for me to sell this to you. Now, why they don't want you to have that mentality is because that is a taxless system, right? If you do 5 minutes of work, if I say, hey, can you clean up that mess and I'll give you this pen, what taxes were collected? 0. Because you didn't actually use their digital asset. There's no transaction there, and I think that's to some degree where people have maybe, again, the sheep that have gone astray I guess in your sense, been hurdled in, is because they forget that manual labor or like physical assets, they basically void the tax system. I'll give you my car here, just have it. It was for $0. Well, on the taxes, $0. I didn't sell it to you for anything. But Jose, you're gonna go, do this for me. You're gonna clean my house. You're gonna do whatever it is. That kind of a mentality can actually crumble a lot of that control that they have over you. But so again, people are so fixated on the dollar, and that's the hard part, And again, this was the mentality when crypto was first kind of coming out. Is when it was just a couple of coins. There was Ripple and Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these things. I remember when I was talking to my buddy at that time, it was always trying to see which coin did the best, quote unquote, versus another one. And the only way you could figure out was the dollar. Well, this one went up $2, this one only went up $1, so therefore I need to get more of this other coin. And I remember he would always try to say the strategy was getting more coins, regardless of what it was. So there was it's kind of these crazy programs, but they would do auto trading coin against coin. And you would have to kind of figure out, if maybe Bitcoin was what you were after, the trader would just find a way to just accumulate more and more Bitcoin, just buying and selling it against some other asset that wasn't maybe doing as well. And it was just a crazy mentality because, again, how do you judge or how do you say I'm doing better? If I'm getting more Bitcoin, but Bitcoin was going down in value per the dollar, you weren't doing so hot. But if all you wanted to do was accumulate more and more Bitcoin, you were doing well. So again, I know it's kind of it's an out there mentality, but that's kind of where to some degree we almost have to be. Is if my goal is just I want to have more mics, how do I get more mics? Okay, if I have to trade pins to get mics, there's a weird system that maybe I can come up with where I can get these pins for 50 cents and I can trade the guy who has mics who needs pins and he's going to give me a mic. there's ways to go about it. I don't know, we're getting out there because my coffee's
No,
kicking
no.
in.
But I think
that's what I mean. That's where you have to break the system and realize it's not always just about the dollar or that currency that you have in your hand. That's where gold comes in, because again, gold in its mentality is not supposed to be going up in value per se. It's supposed to reflect the value of the dollar. So as my gold price has gone up dramatically over the last couple of months, it's not because it's gained value, it's that the dollar has reduced its value. So you could argue when people say like, oh, the dollar is doing so much better, well, it must not be, because my value of gold has gone up. So
yes.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's got to be, people have to realize there's different. You got to break away from this idea of the dollar. It's not real.
And you know, and this is kind of where I think if we go back and we look at the comparisons of what these fictional books were back then, how much they've materialized, even to your point when it comes to like the financialization of like, you know, going into digital currency.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're talking Big Brother, obviously looking over everything that you do, all your assets.
Yeah.
And again, and they're going to propagate that as a form of freedom. That is freedom for us, because if you allow us to see what you're doing, then it gives us freedom to know that there's nothing bad happening on the side, but at the same time, you've given up some of those rights, right? And again, I think there's a lot of similarities, not only with that book, but there's other books, like you said. We talked about Star Wars and the Republic, or how, I mean, I'm not a Star Wars fan or a Trekkie, but I'm sure the people that do and are listening, they can probably share some of their comments to see if there's any similarities of those fictional stories to what's taking place today, and see if any of that has materialized. If you are listening, by all means, please provide some comments, because believe me, there's people that are Trekkies that, I mean, they go to conventions for crying out loud. I don't know.
I got customers that are...
And there's also Star Wars fans, right? I mean, especially when the last episodes were coming out, I mean, it grew a huge fan base.
Yeah.
So I wasn't one of those, right?
Yeah.
And I did watch maybe back in the 1980s, early 80s, late 70s, I think, when they first came out. Maybe I remember Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and that was pretty much the story of what I knew, right? And back then, you know, as a kid, I think we're looking at movies that were very like, wow, very fictional, but kind of got our minds going, right? And when you come to think about it today, how far are we from that era?
Yeah.
And it seems like we're there. If not, we're pretty close. So I think that was the nature of our story today, right? Is you know, and again, the reason what it prompted me to bring this up is because listening to my son reading this book and having to do a presentation, and as he recited what he was going to say, I said, man, I haven't read this book or I haven't seen the movie for a long time. But man, you just you triggered something for me to start thinking, and I go, man, a lot of similarities of what you're saying are happening today. And that was it, Roy. I mean, again, we did provide you some local updates. If you are a subscriber, follower, please continue to like, share, but more importantly, provide some feedback, provide some comments, and let us know if we're touching on some sensitive topics or we're not, and let us know what would you like to hear. Roy, anything that you'd like to add before we
No, I say just stay awake and keep aware of your surroundings. That's all.
Always make sure you wear that tinfoil hat, because that's right. Anyhow, keep yourself sharp, keep motivated, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again for watching. We'll look forward to